A horrific car ramming kills 35 in the city of Zhuhai. Donald Trump vows to free Jimmy Lai, and the People's Liberation Army Navy catching up with American aircraft carriers? That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Surfshark. Whenever you go online, you should be using a VPN like Surfshark to cover your tracks and protect your identity. I'll tell you more at the end. Hong Kong leader John Lee has warned the United States to stay out of the city's internal affairs after Trump vowed to free Jimmy Lai. Jimmy Lai is the billionaire mogul founder of the Hong Kong pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily. That paper sadly went out of business. Forcibly. It was way too popular with its readers and way too unpopular with the CCP, because Apple Daily supported dangerous ideas like democracy in Hong Kong. In August 2020, Lai was arrested and charged with publishing seditious materials and colluding with foreign governments after Hong Kong enacted a national security law fed to them by the Chinese Communist Party to crack down on political dissent in the supposedly independent city. Oddly enough, his arrest was seen as political. Jimmy Lai's trial began last December and is expected to resume next week, with Lai taking the stand for the first time as defense arguments begin. Lai has pleaded not guilty. Last month, conservative podcast host Hugh Hewitt asked Trump whether he would speak to Chinese leader Xi Jinping about getting Lai out of China. His response?
By the way, 100% I'll get him out. He'll be easy to get out. But we don't have people that even talk about it.
This obviously upset John Lee, Hong Kong's chief executive. And now that Trump is set to return to the White House, he has responded saying, "In these respects, I hope that all countries will respect the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and avoid political interference that could affect the judiciary and normal commercial activities in Hong Kong." Yeah, because if anyone's known for being super respectful, it's Donald Trump. I look forward to hearing Lee's insulting nickname. My bet's on Stupid Lee. Hong Kong's government denies that judicial independence is under threat, claims that it respects the rule of law, and says that the CCP-backed national security law was necessary to protect Hong Kong from terrorism and subversion, because nothing is more terrifying and subversive than facts. But Trump is worrying the CCP in other ways as well, namely with some of his impending cabinet appointments. Republican Florida Senator Marco Rubio is slated to be Secretary of State, and Republican Florida Representative Mike Waltz is set to become Trump's national security advisor. And these are very noteworthy picks indeed, especially concerning Beijing. I'd say they're China hawks, but since they're both from Florida, they're more like China Gators. Senator Marco Rubio, who has taken an aggressive stance on China's emergence as an economic power, is set to become the first sitting Secretary of State to have been sanctioned by Beijing, adding fresh turbulence to a tense relationship. And Mike Waltz in 2021 declared America was in a cold war with the Chinese Communist Party. Trump has also tapped Republican New York Representative Elise Stefanik as the American ambassador to the United Nations. During her tenure as a congresswoman, Stefanik has cited countering China's economic and national security threats to the U.S. as one of her top priorities. Trump, who has long touted himself as tough on Beijing, is definitely giving an indication of where his administration wants to focus regarding world affairs. As one China expert put it, Trump is assembling a foreign policy team packed with tough-on-China politicians that will worry leaders in Beijing. Xi Jinping may become more paranoid about U.S. intentions and feel compelled to undertake stronger shows of force that heighten bilateral tensions, which would be nothing new given that China has been ramping up tensions for quite a while. Looking at China's stock market, birth rate, and morale, tensions are about the only thing they're able to ramp up. Speaking of ramped up tensions, it looks like China has built a nuclear reactor to run one of the People's Liberation Army's Navy aircraft carriers, putting the U.S. Navy on alert. After analyzing satellite imagery and documents from Beijing, researchers with California's Middlebury Institute of International Studies have confirmed that the CCP has developed a land-based prototype nuclear reactor that can provide power to a large surface warship. That reactor would be the Longwei Project nuclear reactor, Sichuan's province Mucheng Township. This is a big step for China. Nuclear-powered warships take longer to build than traditional carriers, but they can remain at sea for longer and store more weapons and other materials instead of fuel. Great, so now they can hose Filipino boats longer without needing to refuel. The reactor would also allow China to generate more power to run bigger, better, and more advanced technical systems on the warship. So far, only France and the US have nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. But the PLAN, already the world's biggest navy and rapidly advancing its shipbuilding and technological capabilities, may soon be the third. And with China's increasing aggression and designs on the Indo-Pacific, this is something that the West needs to keep a close eye on. Specifically, Trump's China Gators. And after the break, China suffers a devastating car ramming attack. Welcome back. At least 35 people were killed and 45 injured in a car rampage through a Chinese stadium. According to local police, a man crashed his car into a stadium in Zhuhai on Monday and began running down groups of people exercising on the sports track, including elderly and children, apparently out of unhappiness over a divorce settlement. To whomever divorced this man, good call, he doesn't seem like the nicest guy. Witnesses are coming forward saying that it appears the perpetrator charged intentionally at high speeds towards them. One man named Mr. Chen told Caixin News magazine he and his walking group had just completed a lap of the stadium when a car charged towards them at high speed, knocking down many people. Another person at the scene told Caixin it drove in a loop and people were hurt in all areas of the running track. Police say the man, named Fan, was arrested trying to flee Zhuhai Sports Center and is currently comatose due to self-inflicted wounds. This is believed to be the country's deadliest known act of public violence in decades. Of course, those incidents don't include organ harvesting, beatings, genocide, or other regime-linked violent acts. Those are more private than public. But this attack is just one more in an ongoing trend of increased violence, such as stabbings in recent years, as we've covered on this channel, something called revenge killings. I'll leave a link to that episode below. Now, this incident has sparked outcry throughout China, with Xi Jinping vowing to harshly punish Mr. Fan, and the local government releasing a pamphlet on how to avoid being hit by a car attack. Since the attack also took place during a major military air show in the city, some are saying that the attack was instigated by foreign forces. So far, details about the dead haven't emerged, but citizens started setting up makeshift memorials and paying tribute to the victims there. You know, I think we could all go for a China Uncensored mental health break right about now. It's more like it. They only intentionally plow into each other for playtime and cuddles. While some images and videos are still circulating online, the CCP already has begun to heavily censor and restrict as much footage as it can on social media outlets, much as they have after other incidents of mass violence, while also quickly cleaning up the crime scene. And now they've begun to remove the makeshift memorials, which is strange because the CCP has always been so good at remembering massacres. Xi Jinping is beginning a diplomatic tour of Latin America. Xi Jinping will depart Wednesday for a 9-day trip during which he will inaugurate the $1.5 billion Chinese-financed Chencai megaport in Peru and attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Peru and the G20 Summit in Brazil. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, Chencai Port is among 17 ports globally where China holds a majority stake and is one of more than 100 port projects built globally under China's flagship Belt and Road Initiative. Too bad the flag in flagship isn't a surrender flag, considering how much of a disaster the BRI's been. The U.S. has warned that this port could be a dual-use port, meaning for civilian aspects like trade, as well as military purposes, especially since it's a deep water port. China and Peru will also sign up to 30 agreements, including an updated free trade agreement. It's likely that Xi will try to amplify the image of China as a growing global power willing to help Latin America and the global South more generally to improve its infrastructure and economy, because he's done such a great job with China's infrastructure and economy. But that could work, especially since the US and other Western countries have not always been great at assisting the development of the global South. One thing is for sure, the West, and especially the incoming US administration, can't just sit by and let this happen, unless they're just lying in wait, like the terrifying China Gators. And did you know that every time you go online, everything you do is potentially compromised? And that's why no matter where you live, no matter what you do online, you should always be keeping your internet activity private with a VPN like Surfshark. If you're not taking active steps to protect yourself, everything you do is being tracked and logged by the websites you visit, your internet service provider, and often by your own government. Using a VPN makes you harder to track. Surfshark has servers you can connect to in over 100 countries. That's more than any other VPN. That makes your connection faster and more reliable. Plus, Surfshark has top-of-the-line encryption and a no-logs policy, meaning they don't collect your browsing data. That's why Surfshark was rated Editor's Choice for the best VPN for privacy and security by PC Mag. So check out Surfshark. With just one Surfshark account, you can connect as many devices as you want. It also comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So try out Surfshark risk-free. Go to surfshark.com/uncensored to get up to 4 months extra. That's surfshark.com/uncensored. The link is in the description below. And before YouTube kicks you to some random video, check out the latest episode of my new show, Deep Thoughts While Gaming, where I hide controversial topics in video game content. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.